So this last one is how do you weigh and frame an argument, or the last one in the first half of this intermediate series. So this first half really just wants to cover argument making and how to do it well. The second half will talk more about strategy, extensions, the technicalities of debating. But I think for this first half, we just want to talk about how do you make a good argument. So weighing and framing, I think these are two things that are very distinct, but they tend to mix. Because when you explain the framing for something, it could make it more important in the round, or a lot of people weigh material by framing. So what are they? Weighing is simply providing a metric for which to compare material. You're saying, here is a certain standard. If we do well on this standard, we win this, maybe this debate, this issue, etc. Whereas framing is simply telling the judge, here's a particular lens with which to view this material. And that isn't necessarily weighing in nature, but oftentimes, the way in which you frame could also inform the way that ends up occurring. I personally think there are three weighing strategies. This is probably not an exhaustive list, but I have tried to come up with as many as I have thought of or possible. And I've divided them into three main categories. Number one is argument quality, second is the end outcome, and the third is round dynamics. First is weighing by argument quality. Simply, how well did you argue versus your opponent? So this is more of how did they debate? How was the argument constructed? Was it done in a manner that is very shoddy or very well? And I think there are many things about an argument that you could use to compare. So one is the mechanism. Simply, how likely did they prove their arguments to be true? So one way to just go about it is they have a very lackluster mechanism for this, and thus we win the debate because our arguments are much more likely to happen than theirs. Or they might not have a mechanism for something. Second is inherence. It's a question of how likely is this argument uniquely caused by the motion. So let's take, for example, I didn't write it here, but let's say the motion is this House would ban American football. And the Gov argument is that American football, because of its nature, contributes to a culture of violence in society. Because people are in constant physical contact with one another, the express objective of the game is to tackle someone into the ground on defense, and therefore it contributes to a culture of violence. In terms of inherence, though, one thing I would question about that is this culture of violence in America, for example, one that is just solely determined by American football? There are so many other much bigger factors that contribute to it. And this is a question then of tipping point. Or is this likely something that will actually meaningfully change what they think it'll change in the debate? Third is nuance. So is this specific change in the motion accounted for in the argument? Meaning, if it's a motion about a particular country, do they have a good enough understanding of that country, its politics, its culture, how it works, its dynamics, to have, I guess, sway in the round and convince you of their argument? Or in the earlier examples, did they account for, if you haven't seen it, there was a motion about this House supports the rapid elimination of tariff and non-tariff barriers in trade. Did they account for the word rapid? And is there a way in which rapid could be very meaningful in terms of constructing a case? Next is proportionality. So is the mechanism proportionate to the outcome? I.e., is the mechanism so game-changing that it also leads to a groundbreaking outcome? And I find that a lot of the time, people will sometimes prove an argument and then claim an impact that is not at all proportional. So let's say, for example, disadvantaged communities should make new characters in media that represent them rather than recreate established characters. Maybe you can prove very well that people will gain more sympathy for you and your group. Maybe you can claim that people will be more incentivized to pursue more and more creations of that character. Maybe you could say as well that this is good because young people who are seeing these characters in the media for the first time feel like they can become heroes, feel like they can become all these different occupations, etc. However, if those are your ways to prove it or reasons to give that it's good, but your end impact is that this will significantly increase, say, work opportunities or that this will take down years of legislation against this particular disadvantaged group, I'm not sure I'd believe you. Because while I am convinced of the mechanisms and I am convinced that those are good things, I'm not necessarily sure if the mechanisms reach all those good things. Lastly is realism. Or simply, is this a realistic argument? I think a lot of people might get stuck in debate world. It's very important to put things back in reality, and pointing to empirical evidence is one of the most effective ways to do that. Second is you can have weighing on the end outcome, and what I mean by that is assuming everything to be true. They made an absolutely perfect proof for the argument. How do you weigh the end outcome? So there are a lot of simple ones, just like scale or how many people are impacted. If you help 100 people, that's assumed to be better than helping 10 people. It's very utilitarian in nature, like changes everything when you go into more like philosophical or trolley problem things. But like when you're in most other debates, not necessarily philosophy debates, that's often how things end up becoming weighed anyway. Second is gravity, or the magnitude of the impact. Perhaps you're helping one person on one side and another person on another side, but the degree to which you are helping them, say you give one person $100 and another person $10, the gravity of the $100 is much greater. Third is vulnerability, and it's assessing the need of the stakeholder in question. So let's say you are helping one person each, you are giving them both $100, you're giving $100 to a millionaire and $100 to someone that is living on a day-to-day paycheck. The $100 will be much more meaningful for the vulnerable person in question. They're probably in more need of protection and therefore should be morally prioritized in this comparison. Next is time. When does the benefit accrue? I.e., if it can happen faster, that might be a good thing. And for how long? So if it's very short term only, it might not be worth it versus something that might be very sustainable. Next is cost effectiveness. Is this worth the time and resources? So maybe you get a very good thing, but it came at a very large cost. And it's a question of, could we have possibly spent this on a much better thing? For example, I've done debates on should we donate to very large charities or many different small charities. And you can make arguments on both sides as to why, with the same amount of money, you can do more or less good, depending on what you end up donating to. Last is responsibility, meaning even if the action is beneficial, is the actor in question morally responsible for producing these benefits? So for example, if you have this house would significantly tax migration from developing countries to developed countries, or something like this house believes that developing countries should tax migration to developed countries. Maybe you can produce a lot of good things because of that. Maybe the taxes you collect could be used for education. Maybe the taxes you could be used for many different things. It's a question of, is it fair to tax those people to begin with? Because even if it produces good things, should they be responsible for having to produce those good things? You could argue yes, you could argue no, but now it's a question of who has proved responsibility to a greater extent. The last thing is just the strategic element of the round. How does this place? So first, and particular for BP, is novelty. How new is it? So if you're closing, there's more of a burden to be new, definitely, compared to like your opening. And thus, how new it is, especially for weighing between closing teams, if you're deciding whether or not CG or CO could win. If you feel their contributions are of equal importance, but one is more novel, they might end up winning the debate. Second is responsiveness. So does the argument end up responding to other claims that are being made in the round, and therefore it's more engaging, it takes into account more factors, and therefore should weigh heavily. Last is independence, meaning are you reliant on other teams to prove things to be true or not? So let's say your opening team, you rely on them to prove X claim, and then at closing, your argument is that X claim leads to Y, and Y is good. That might put you under the opening team because you kind of depend on them in order for your argument to end up working and being meaningful and fruitful within the round. So how do you pick which ones to use? So definitely don't try to hit all of these. You'll spend like 20 minutes per speech. And I'd say in an actual round, you'll notice that not all of these will apply. But here are some guide questions that might help in deciding which ones. The first one, and I think the most important one, is what are you winning on the most? Because there might be times where your proof is slightly better than the other team. There might be times when you might impact a few more people than the other team, but those differences are so marginal that they're not really important to point out. You want to note where are you most likely to win these metrics. Second is what are most apt for the motion. So if you're going to say what has the most impact, that's going to be a lot more effective in a high impact debate rather than a low impact debate. Because in a high impact debate, the margins of difference in impact can be very big, but in a low impact debate, those could be very, very small. Lastly, which metrics have material that we can point to as reasons for which we are winning on them? And what I mean by this one is just, can you point to an argument? Can you point to a rebuttal that you have said earlier that will help you use this weighing reason? So for example, if you're going to prove more cost effectiveness, you can't just say we're more cost effective and then like use that fact to win you the debate. You might have to say we are more cost effective because maybe earlier in your speech or in your partner's speech, you have given reasons that what you're doing is cheaper but achieves a greater or a similar impact as to what the other side is doing. So definitely be strategic, be discerning as to what are the most useful. That should end the first half of this section. Yeah.